千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. So let's talk about the chapter title in Chinese. So a lot of people don't know that every chapter has Chinese title. Some have two. This one has one. Chang Shen Zhang. So in Mandarin, the two characters mean long life, respectively. The character on the left, that means long. The middle character means life. And the third character there means chapter. So long life chapter, meaning longevity. The only thing to be careful here is to realize that this is not referring to physical longevity. It's talking about spiritual longevity, which has different implications. Although, because the mind and the spirit is at the center of everything we do, and certainly at the center of our physical existence, if you are spiritually lasting, if you have spiritual longevity, it will translate to physical health as well. So here's what the chapter looks like. Chapter 59. In governing people and serving heaven, there is nothing like conservation. Only with conservation is it called submitting early. Submitting early is called emphasis on accumulating virtues. Accumulating virtues means there is nothing one cannot overcome. When there is nothing that one cannot overcome, one's limits are unknown. The limitations being unknown, one can possess sovereignty. With this mother principle of power, one can be everlasting. This is called deep roots and firm foundation. The Tao of longevity and lasting vision. So this is a shorter chapter than 58. It does contain quite a bit to reflect upon. Let's get into the analysis of the different sections. When we look at this particular chapter and analyze from one line to the next, we find that there actually aren't that many repeating characters that we can recognize. There are a few. So for instance, if you look at line 2 and line 3, the third character in line 2 is the same character as the third character in line 3. So there's a repetition there. And if you look at lines 8 and 9, in the middle of that, in the 5th and 6th character, you see that they are repeated from 8 down to 9. The other lines don't seem to have a whole lot of repeating characters. Or they have repeating characters, but they don't appear in the same position. Let me highlight a couple and show you what I mean. So if you take a look at line 3 and 4, you've got two characters that repeat, but in line 3, it's at the end. In line 4, it's in the beginning. So this chapter has an unusual structure that is not similar to the other chapters that we have looked at. If you look further down, you find that the same pattern is persisting. You've got the same 3 characters in the end of line 4 as the beginning of line 5. This pattern repeats itself downward, so it would actually be better if I show the second set of repetitions in a different color and alternate between the 2. Here's what I mean by that. So line 3 and 4, you've got repeating characters from the end and the beginning respectively. Same with line 4 and 5, from the end to the beginning, and same with 5 and 6. The ending characters are the same as the 3 characters in line 6. Same in 7 and 8. The same 4 characters repeat. And then the same in line 8 and 9, the same 2 characters repeat. So it's a different structure. And these are the repetitions that are not found in the beginning or the end. So we can see that we've got 3 sections going on. It looks like this. We've got the section in the middle, that's the main body of the chapter. Then we have 2 lines in the beginning as the intro, and then 2 lines at the bottom as the conclusion. That's how this looks. This, of course, is not material that you will see from any other source. Other than this one, people don't really talk a whole lot about the poetic structure of the original Tao Te Ching. So let's go ahead and start digging into line-by-line analysis, starting with the first 2 lines. We begin with governing people, 治人. So what is that? Literally, the first character means to govern, and the second character means people, to govern people. So you can tell the translation is a straightforward, literal transcription. Now, in the ancient context, to govern the people, this applies to the ancient rulers who rule their kingdoms. So to govern people is to rule the people of a kingdom. So what about today? What about for you and me? What is this talking about? At the personal level, this is all about managing personal relationships. So it is metaphorically referring to the people in your life as the subjects of your kingdom. Now, you can, of course, take the metaphor too far. This metaphor is not meant to depict that you are the absolute ruler over the people in your life. What it does mean is that you are the main character in the story of your life, just like the king is the ruler of a kingdom. Everyone else in your life is playing the role of a supporting character, like the subjects of a kingdom. So this is fine as long as you remember that in the other person's life story, the other person is the main character. You are part of the supporting cast. So I think this line now makes a little bit of sense here. The king to subjects, similar to you and the people in your life. And if someone in your life is a Tao cultivator as well, then they also have that perspective from their vantage point. Okay, let's continue on. Then I want to talk a little bit about the next 2 characters. This is about serving heaven. What is that, and what does it mean? To understand the next 2 characters, the first realization is that in the Tao, the idea is that whatever the Tao is, it's the underlying reality. It's what underlies absolutely everything. What that means is that all different levels of existence reflect one another. So this is sort of like saying, I often go to another location and then come back. I make essentially a round trip. This is reflected in the cosmos by the Earth's orbit around the sun, as one example. And there are many other reflections. All levels of existence reflect one another. Therefore, our world is a lower level reflection of heaven. You find this idea over and over again in ancient Chinese thought and literature. It was quite often done to compare the emperor of China in ancient times to the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor is the ruler of a mythical heavenly kingdom that reflects the empire, the ancient empire of China. Therefore, the Jade Emperor is the first and foremost among all the deities of ancient Chinese mythology. There's that reflection. The ancient Chinese would also point to unusual weather patterns and then compare that as a reflection of injustice in the world, like something is wrong. There's a miscarriage of injustice, miscarriage of justice becoming injustice, and that's reflected in unusual weather patterns or bad weather. So in Mandarin, there's even period dramas where you will hear that idea being expressed, 天象异常，必有其渊, which translates to, the weather is abnormal. There must be some strange miscarriage of justice going on, because the heavens are a higher level reflection of Earth, of the world. You may find this quaint, maybe a little exotic, but this idea is actually quite common in the ancient world, whether east or west. Even in the Western world in ancient times, astronomers, regular everyday people will look to the heaven and then feel alarm when they see something unusual. Example, comet. Comets have a long history, usually as omens and bearers of bad news. Now, on the other hand, the death of Julius Caesar was marked by a comet, and this was taken by the Romans as a sign of his divinity. Also, Napoleon made a fuss about the appearances of comets and connected that to some of his early military victories. And never mind ancient times, even today, we still link what happens on Earth, in our world, to what's happening in heaven. One quick, simple example that I can bring up is when there is a funeral and it's raining, you will hear people saying the angels are crying. Why? Because in heaven, the sadness of the funeral attendees is being reflected in the tears which come down as rain. So this is not unusual. It seems to be part of human nature. So let's continue on with this discussion. What does that imply when it comes to the Tao? And this is where I introduce you to the concept of Tian Li. Tian means heaven or sky. Li means reasoning, reason. Tian Li can be translated in different ways. When you have this heavenly reason, it's representing the nature of the gods. It's representing justice being carried out. It is representing the course of nature, and it even stands in for one's conscience. When there is something that goes contrary to tianli, that will be injustice. The way that we express it in the West is that sometimes we see something going on, we say things like, oh, that just ain't right. What are we talking about? We're saying that it's a miscarriage of justice. It is wrong. Therefore, serving heaven means living your life in accordance with the heavenly Tao. And that in turn means follow conscience. Remember, tianli, that which is right and just, it is supposed to be a reflection of human conscience. So when following your conscience, you are letting your highest self dictate what you should and should not do to determine what is right or wrong. Then, let's continue on with this. Follow reasoning, because the heavens, the gods, the divinities, the Tao, nature, has endowed you with reasoning faculties, with a mind that can think for itself. So for anything that is not clear, things that you can contemplate and figure out for yourself, and then you can conduct yourself in accordance with reason, which is reflecting the heavenly reason, tianli. So your behaviors, actions, decisions must all be reasonable, must all be in accordance with reason. That's another aspect of serving heaven. And then let's also not forget about the justice aspect of it, that which is right or virtuous. You must follow virtue, follow that which is virtuous. When you see something that is quote unquote not right, not in accordance with the Tao, you must help. And then the fourth one, follow nature. This just means that in living our lives, we have to follow the natural rhythm of nature in going through your day. You have to be busy and productive certain times of the day, but there is also downtime where you can rest and recharge your batteries. That's following tianli. It's serving heaven. And one more concept, and then I think we need to wrap. Let me direct your attention to the last character in line 2. Se. Pinyin looks like this, S-E, but it's se. A lot of times pinyin doesn't look like it should sound in a certain way, but when you study pinyin, they definitely teach you that the way to pronounce the E is like the sound. So in modern Mandarin, this character means stingy, being a miser. In ancient times, it had a related meaning, but it's positive instead of negative in terms of connotation. When we say someone is 吝啬 in modern Mandarin, that's a stingy person, a miser, a negative connotation. In ancient times, it means not being wasteful. That's a positive context. So the nuance is different. Specifically here, when we talk about conservation or not being wasteful, this is talking about time, energy, mind, and spirituality. And mind is referring to you directing your attention. So all of these are resources. The time that we have in this world, that's a resource. The energy that we can expend to do things, that's a resource. It can be used up, then we become exhausted. Your attention, your spirituality, these are all finite just because our time in this world, in this lifetime, in this identity is finite. To conserve is to have that recognition. You know, I only have so much. I have to use what I have wisely. So together, the first two lines, line 1 and line 2, speak of the way we interact with other people, that's governing people, and live our lives according to the Tao, that's serving heaven. In doing that, we want to conserve our resources, use them efficiently and effectively, because when it's gone, when the finite resource is gone, it's gone. When one day is wasted, that day is never coming back. So there's definitely a sense of urgency here in these lines provided by Lao Tzu. It is not entirely true that the Tao is just do whatever you want, relax, let everything happen by themselves. That's one side of the yin and yang symbol. The other side is to be aware, listen, we have a limited amount of time here. If we want to do something, we have to utilize limited resources wisely and conserve against wasting. So these are the major concepts. We talked about serving heaven, we talked about conserving, and we are pretty much running out of time. So I want to jump ahead to the summary to wrap up our day today. So 59 again is about progressing in the Tao. We've only had time to cover the first step. There are 8 steps to it. Step 1 is conserve. As I mentioned, our days and resources in this lifetime are finite, so we have to use them wisely. Next time, we're going to talk about submitting early. The sooner you start walking the path, the better. Then, this leads to accumulating virtues. It's all about the power of small gradual changes over time. So we're going to go over that again next time. It's a great lesson in the Tao. And number 4, to overcome all obstacles that nothing can stand in your way. So there's a point in all this. There's a reason why we talk about this in sequence. It's a recipe from Lao Tzu to tell us how to get to a point where we become spiritually powerful so that the obstacles fall by the wayside. Nothing can stand in the way. Lao Tzu will go on to talk about how this makes you a person without limitations. That's yet another manifestation of a very powerful spirituality. That's the direction we're heading into for next time. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.